Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'd like the superintendent to do the roll call, please.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier. Ms. Crowley.
Present.
Mr. Lipset.
Present.
Mr. Morenin.
Present.
Dr. Wells.
Here.
Mr. Kissel.
Here. This works. All right, moving ahead to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the school committee? See nobody. Thank you very much. Also here this evening is City Council Liaison to the School Committee, Mr. Charles Viola. In the audience, I don't believe he has anything to say, but I want to congratulate him on his win last Tuesday?
Yes.
Time's flying, man. Last Tuesday. So congratulations. Thank you. All right, also here is Brandon, our student representative to the school committee. Do you have a report tonight?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent, thank you.
All fall sports have concluded, except for the football team, which plays in Woburn against Winchester on Thanksgiving this year. Tickets will have to be purchased online. Gotta crack my knuckles.
Oh, I thought that was it. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Spirit Week is this week, and leading into the pep rally into the following week. The themes for this year are as follows. Got a drink of water again.
There you go.
Smudged. This past Monday, the 13th, was Blue Out in honor of our classmate, Matthew DeFeo, who was suffering from Guillain-Barré syndrome. Today was Rhyme Without Reason Day. Tomorrow, Wednesday the 15th, will be Barbie vs. Oppenheimer Day, where students will dress up from the two popular movies this past summer. Thursday, the 16th, will be Seasons Day, where each grade dresses up as the seasons. Seniors dress up as summer, juniors dress up as spring, sophomores will dress up as fall, freshmen will dress up as winter. Friday, the 17th, is Pajama Day. Next Monday, the 20th, is Cultural Day, where we dress up to represent our individual cultures. Next Tuesday, the 21st, is Opposite Day, where teachers dress up as students and students dress up as teachers. The pep rally is going to be hosted on its traditional day, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving in the upper gym. Also, the annual homecoming dance is this very Friday, the 17th, and as per usual, will be held in the main foyer of the high school. DECA had a field trip earlier this morning to Merrimack, chaperoned by Miss Keenan and Miss Coughlin. The job fair is this Thursday, period 3. The non-project presentations will be here this week in the wellness classrooms. Report cards go out on November 16th. And just a friendly reminder, the Tanner Closet is always looking for donations. And I'd like to congratulate everybody who ran and got reelected.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Brandon? I have one. I can picture the Barbie dress up. What do you think is going to be for Oppenheimer? What would be a costume that someone might wear?
Like 1940 style, like,
There you go. All right.
Three-piece suit.
yeah,
Albert
the
Einstein
hat,
wig.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
maybe the glasses
Oppenheimer was
too.
cooler than that.
All right. That's great.
Have a good night.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, now on to reports and presentations of the superintendent and staff, starting with the large crowd in our gallery, the elementary school improvement plans 2023-24. Elementary principals are all here.
So collectively, I'm welcoming whoever is presenting up now, so. I think it's a phased approach, but everybody participates, if I'm not mistaken. So first, Mr. Nickerson and Mr. Kamenetz from the Reeves Elementary School. Mr. Nickerson after Malcolm White.
All right, thank you and good evening.
Mr. Kamenetz and I are going to present goals 1 and 2, and they kind of dovetail together a little bit, so that's why we're taking it in tandem. So our first goal, if we can go to the next screen, please, is by June 2024, using district comprehensive literacy plan, the teachers will have identified the elements needed in an effective MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of support, and will have made steps to strengthen their Tier 1 instruction using district curriculum and enact intensive Tier 2 supports within the grade levels, as evidenced by a 5% increase in DIBELS data. And the second goal here is going to kind of continue to work on that, and then we'll explain a little bit more in just a moment.
Good evening, everyone. Goal number 2, like Mr. Nickerson said, is connected, although it's its own goal. By June 2024, teachers will have developed their capacity to use M-Class, DIBELS, data, as well as individual student performance data to inform targeted small group instruction during WIN and literacy block in order to more effectively help students make incremental gains in reading proficiency as measured by productive and results-oriented collaborative time. With a focus on building capacity to use M-Class. M-Class is a fantastic tool, and staff have already shown and expressed great joy with using it. If you look at the picture that is associated with goal number 2, this is the initial summary of student reports after the DIBELS are given.
I'm sorry, Susan.
Please.
Actually, go back to this one here, please. So it's this right here that we're looking at. You'll see it a little better than that.
So staff give the M-Class online, and every individual assessment is combined into a composite score. And the composite scores for all students are then graphed on a chart like this. And students are then put into groupings based on above benchmark, at benchmark, below benchmark, and well below benchmark. And staff can use this initial data to create targeted small group instruction for both WIN and structured literacy routines in their classrooms. And this is a fantastic starting point, and this online program can be used to give suggested small groups, suggested activities, lesson plans, and through progress monitoring, we're able to create fluid groupings for
Go to the next slide now.
our small group targeted instruction. These 3 are examples of groupings that students can be placed in. A foundational skills group, accuracy group, fluency group. Students are placed in this for what they need at that one moment in time after the initial DIBELS M-Class assessment. After some small group targeted instruction, they're then progress monitored to find out what they need and how they've grown, the gains, if there are deficits, how we can best approach those, and it's all through the capacity of M-Class.
If we take a look at the next slide, please. So on this slide here, this is an example of what we would see in a data meeting, which would be with a full grade level team of teachers, as well as special ed teachers, multilingual teachers, and our literacy team of the content specialist, a reading teacher, and in the schools that have it, a Title I teacher. So what you can see behind you is the 4 different colors. So if you are in red, that means that you are well below the benchmark for that particular grade level. In yellow, you're approaching but still not there. In green, you've met the benchmark expectation for the grade level, and in blue, you've exceeded it. So benchmarks are given 3 times throughout the year. So at the beginning of the year, we'll DIBEL the students. We'll find out basically where they start. That's their benchmark beginning. Midway through the year, we'll do it again, and towards the end of the year for a 3rd time. In between, as Mr. Kamenetz was mentioned, we'll do progress monitoring. So based on the information that you would see there and how it's categorized, you can see as students progress through the learning process. So if you look next at blue, it just so happens that next to it in this particular example, all the names remain blue. However, if you look at green, you can see that some of them are blue, there's a yellow one, and some of them are green. What you're looking at there is we have our benchmark, and they're next to where they were when benchmarked. However, as we did the progress monitoring, you can see that things have changed. So a student at the top, I don't know that you can see it, but in green, student G is at the top in yellow. That's a student that is continuing to progress but did not progress as quickly as other students had progressed. So while continuing to progress, it's not at the same rate that other students have. And as we can kind of follow this type of progression on a constant and updated basis, we can continually update the groups that the students are in so that we can target appropriately the learning that they're being exposed to. So as, again, Mr. Common mentioned, we can do this during the WIN block, which is the what I need block throughout the day, as well as during structured literacy routine. And that's when all students are in the classroom with the classroom teacher. Any questions for us at this time?
Dr. Wells?
Yeah, I understand having at least one of the goals for reading, but I'm confused why they're both reading and not one is math and one is reading.
For this year, the primary focus was on reading, and moving into the future, it's going to adjust kind of as we get our literacy feet really firmly under us. I think that in the future, we're going to be looking at more of a math focus.
Okay, thank you.
Are you continuing?
No,
Oh, you're all
we're
set. Any other questions? I don't know if there was like a part 2.
There's a part 3 coming up in just
No, I know. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. I just didn't know if anyone else had questions.
Okay.
All right, I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
It appears that North Woburn is coming up. Judy Mara, Principal at Winston Rumford, and Dr. Linda Riley at the Alta Vista.
Alrighty. Nice. Good evening, everybody. To get us started, one of the things that you'll notice about the school improvements plans this year is in the past couple of years, all of the goals were the same across the schools. The 2 goals that were just presented are the same across all 7 schools. But just like as a classroom teacher is always balancing grade level standards and individual student needs, we're doing the same thing as principals, balancing what we need to do to be consistent across all 7 schools while also knowing our buildings and really adjusting some of the goals based on what we need. The other thing you'll notice, in a minute you'll hear about our particular goal. The other schools have similar goals that are connected to the responsive classroom. Dr. Riley and I have chosen a slightly different focus for our goals based on our school needs.
So our third goal is by June 24, our teachers will increase the use of culturally responsive practices in order to better meet the needs of our increasingly diverse populations of students, as evidenced by walkthroughs focused on effective practices.
Go on to next. Great. So what are culturally responsive practices, and why have we selected this goal instead of just focusing on responsive classroom? When you look at culturally responsive practices in responsive classrooms, it's almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. They both work really hand in hand. The focus for culturally responsive practices, it focuses on, in particular, an asset-based lens, thinking about our students and the cultural diversity within our schools, and in particular with our multilingual learners. It also looks to set high expectations, which is one of those things that goes hand in hand with responsive classroom. It really works on building relationships and usually using that cultural lens to get to know students, placing students at the center of our work, and really making decisions that connect families, schools, students, and really our whole community. So all of those key pieces kind of bring us together, and then, as Dr. Riley will share, will shift us to thinking about how are we going to meet this goal.
So you addressed what culturally responsive practices are and a little bit about why they're important, and then just a general kind of feeling of why they're important is that they're really going to they increase the capacity of our teachers and students to better understand each other, communicate with the families and other stakeholders in the community, and it also kind of forces teachers to look at their own identity and reflect on how their identity impacts their teaching and their strategies. So that's a little bit about why we believe that culturally responsive practices are so important at this stage.
And also thinking about, I think as a school committee looked at this, and I know within our own buildings we've looked at this, is really looked at the shifting demographics within the city, within our schools, and really this is a goal that's going to help us better meet the needs, to really think about what are the needs of our students and how can we support staff in better meeting the needs of students. So we have a few of our action steps here that we're going to be taking. To begin, we're going to be doing some professional reading. In my particular building, we're going to be, there is one book by Zaretta Hammond about culturally responsive teaching in the brain. What I've selected actually for my staff is a similar book, but it uses the lens of multilingual learners. So it's about culturally responsive teaching and multilingual learners. So my staff will be starting, we're doing a book club. We're starting with that text, and it really helps both to understand that difference between the asset-based, deficit-based lens and thinking about students. It helps us to really think about what are some of the practices we need to be more culturally responsive and better meet the needs of our multilingual learners. The next action step is related to responsive classroom, and as I think that you've heard some about is across the city. We're all doing work in all the classrooms related to to responsive classroom. So we're doing things like morning meeting. We're really thinking about really focusing on how do we build relationships with students and families, how do we really get to know our students. And the research is the better we know our students, the more connected we are, the better we can meet their needs as learners. So it allows us to then set higher expectations in terms of learning for students. And then another thing that has already been happening across all 7 buildings, we're going to be using our language acquisition teams to begin to really focus on these practices and work on how can we begin to think about looking at these practices, doing some walkthroughs within our buildings to think about, okay, what does this look like in practice in the classroom?
Some other action steps that we have listed in our goal is communication with families. Strengthening that communication. We use currently Remind, S'more newsletter, and Language Line. And what's unique about these communication methods is that they're all able to be translated into multiple languages. And just having our teachers and myself reach out to families consistently using these 3 tools. Another action step is I've developed a multilingual leaders program in my school. So with the newcomers coming, and I wanted to also highlight the multilingual learners I already have at my school. I have several students that are not only multilingual learners, but first language, not English, that they are fluent in both languages. So I've created a program where they volunteer to spend their recess in the lower level classrooms. So it's 4th and 5th graders that volunteer to spend their recess in the lower level classrooms of K and 1. And it's been really a great thing to build their leadership and their capacity as future leaders in the school system, and also building bonds with those kids in the younger grades. And then also I'm working very closely with a PTO to bring in enrichment programs that kind of act as windows and doors to our student population, and we've had some great success in getting. We just had a woman from Northern India come in and do a dance performance and talk about the storytelling and how it's used in dance. And then we have something lined up with African storytelling, and also in like a hip hop performance lined up for the spring. So just kind of using the PTO and those funds to kind of mirror our student population. So that's kind of the exciting action steps that we're taking on and working together with.
Excellent. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so I understand what you're doing, and I understand how you said you were going to monitor that it was done, but I'm not sure it's the same. Monitoring what you say you're going to do is not necessarily demonstrating that it's effective.
Yep.
And so I was wondering if you thought about other ways of measuring the effectiveness of what you're doing, say, looking at increased involvement of new members to the community and the PTO activities, more responsiveness to other things that are going on. Because what you're measuring is whether they're doing what you're saying, but we're not sure what you're doing is effective for what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think ultimately we're, as principals, we're all measured on student achievement.
Right.
That's the ultimate thing. And so one of the things that culturally responsive practices, they goes hand in hand with setting higher expectations and achievement. So in order to get to that place, we need to make sure the practices are in place. So we're starting with looking for the practices so we can make sure we can get those in place. But the nice thing is this goal goes hand in hand with the other two goals in terms of looking at student achievement. So that will also allow us to begin to look at, in particular in the reading data, as we begin to see these practices happening in the classroom, will we also see a shift in data within the school, and in particular within our literacy data. And the nice thing is, because we're getting things up and going and being really consistent about data meetings, really looking at student growth and learning. And then as we do that, we're looking at, okay, are we doing these specific practices in the classroom? Are we then seeing hand in hand? So we haven't written it into the goal in that same way, but we're always looking at, okay, is this working, and ultimately does it impact student achievement? Because that's our ultimate goal.
Okay, subgroup analysis.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
That data on the lab team, too.
Yes. Yeah.
All set?
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Lipson?
I'm really excited about what you're doing here. You have two of the most diverse, linguistically, racially, culturally, schools in the district. I just want to talk, Dr. Riley, a little bit about the Multilingual Leaders Program, because that sounds like a really, really exciting program. How many students have volunteered to take part?
So right now we have 12 between the fourth and the fifth grade.
Okay.
And then they're working, and they're kind of split evenly with the kindergarten and the first grade. And I've actually, my reading specialist expressed interest. She has been teaming up with me, checking in, making sure that the students are still okay with, taking up their recess time. And so far it's been, they look forward to it. They do it 2 to 3 days a week. They make their own schedules. We also involve the parents in this because it's a big decision for a fourth grader and a fifth grader to make to use their time. And they're also getting ES hours, which is youth engagement service.
That's great, and I love the fact that they're developing their own schedules. They're taking that leadership as well, so that's a lot of growth and for them as well as for the students that they're helping. So yeah, it sounds like a really exciting program. I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you.
Ms. Crowley?
I just wanted to, this is awesome. I wanted to comment that you're taking it's just a great thing, you're taking the diversity of your elementary schools and sort of using it as education opportunities within themselves. Sometimes people you talk about the changing demographics of schools and things like that, but you're actually taking it and taking it a step further, and celebrating the newcomers and giving them this wonderful opportunity to be part of the culture in the schools. So it's like responsive classroom, but you're taking a particular lens on it and focusing on the cultural, linguistic aspect of it. So I just think it's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. I do too. They're enriching our schools so much. So thank you.
Yeah. And we've talked both here and with the administrative team, and really we see this as, this is a great thing. The shifting demographics,
Mm-hmm.
we want to celebrate that, and we want to look at, okay, what can we do to better meet the needs of the students, and how can we do that? What kind of things can we do in terms of shifting teaching practice and looking at as through that asset-based lens, as this is a positive thing.
It's a strength.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I really appreciate that. I was also thinking about parents that are watching this right now that may not be from Woburn and may not have the same background that I do, thinking, wow, I really do belong at the Alta Vista in Munster. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before I forget, I know we're going to go into the next real quick, but I wanted to just acknowledge Jesse Wetzel and James Austin in the audience. They got newly elected last Tuesday as well, and they'll be sitting up here as of January, whenever, first meeting, whenever that is. It doesn't matter to me.
January 1st. I'm not counting.
Okay. Mr. Casares and I are up to present the next goal, which was specific to both Goodyear Elementary and Harold Wyman as housing two of the district programs, the RISE 2 program at Harold Wyman and the GAIN program at the Goodyear. And so both of our staff are looking into inclusive practices and preparing, analyzing, and improving inclusive practices at each of the buildings. So specific to Harold Wyman, as you know, the enrollment in the RISE program grew over the past few years, and now we've split into RISE 1 at Shamrock and RISE 2 at Harold Wyman. And so this is the first year we're at Harold Wyman. And so we've taken a lot of time in prepping the building, prepping the students and the staff for the arrival of the RISE 2 program, which started last spring with a field trip for our Shamrock students coming to Harold Wyman to meet their future classmates and do a few activities with them. We had a parent night, we did a summer scavenger hunt, and we actually were fortunate enough to have many of the same providers from the Shamrock, related service providers and also teachers, transfer over to our building as well. And then, so this year, as we're planning it to continue to improve the inclusive practices, we've partnered with Dot Lucci, who is an inclusion specialist. She's come to our building to do observations in the RISE program already. She's coming actually tomorrow to do some more observations and come to our staff meeting to inform teachers of, the great things that are happening so far and little things they can do to make students feel more inclusive. And at Harold Wyman, we're using this with the addition of the RISE 2 program to kind of look at the inclusion practices across the board. So our multilingual learners and also our students receiving special ed services. So it's really a benefit to the entire staff. So Dot has worked with me and we've come up with a survey that we're going to send out to staff and then better inform our next decisions on what we need to do for professional development. We have the ability with this existing program in a new place to kind of build the plane while we're flying it in the best way possible. We're able to, there's not so much that is set in stone that has been, it's not as if the RISE 2 program has been at Harold Wyman for 10 years. It's brand new. So we're able to make little tweaks and change things on the fly, which has worked out really well for us. And also all of these providers, so when we're talking about inclusive practices for ML students, for students receiving special ed services, and our RISE 2 population, all of the service providers working with those students are part of these data meetings that Mr. Cominant and Mr. Nickerson were talking about in goals 1 and 2. So they're all at the table, we're all talking about the students, they're on those charts that you saw, we're monitoring their progress, and we're changing things as needed through our benchmark meetings and our data meetings. And GAIN.
And at the Goodyear, so the GAIN program has been at the Goodyear for the last 11 years that I've been there. So we've seen it kind of morph and take shape and adapt and look differently a little bit year to year. And so over the past year plus, we've been working closely with the Triumph Center. They consult with us once a week now. And this year we've identified 3 areas where we have goals specific to the GAIN program. So the first area is inclusivity. Feel strongly that it's the GAIN program, but all students there are Goodyear students, and we want them to not only recognize that, but to feel that way. And we do that by kind of looking at our second area, and that is with our positive behavior supports. It's really an approach that we use. It's slow, it's thoughtful, it's really adapted to meet the needs of all the kids there. And I think when you do things right, and when you do things in a way that makes kids feel safe in a sense of belonging and that acceptance, I think you get that buy-in to what we're trying to do. And the third area, and this is really probably the biggest one for us, is our instruction, in which we're really trying to focus on the social, emotional, skills-based learning of our students. And we feel like if we take the responsive classroom, which we're doing school-wide, we also have the support of the Caring School Community Program that we're using in each of the classrooms, and that gives us a lot of tools and a lot of resources that we can use to reach kids where they're at, get them in a space where they're ready, not only to access their academics in the special ed GAIN rooms, but also throughout the school and access more time in the general ed classrooms too, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. So those are the 3 areas specific to the GAIN program.
Excellent. Any questions?
This
What's that?
is a follow-up. So I assume you're going to do the same thing, the subgroup analysis to see whether it's really working, as opposed to looking at attendance at meetings. I assume people go to meetings when they're required to. It's really not a measure. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good? Excellent.
Good job.
Heather Reeves.
Shane.
So Mr. Cominant's coming up twice.
Wow.
Extra, they won't let somebody come up by himself.
Joined by Mr. Clark. Mr. Shamrock.
Need a balance.
So hello again. So we're sharing the Reeves goal. Reeves was selected as one of 7 elementary schools in the state of Massachusetts for a DESE pilot program called the Playful Learning Institute. It's a very exciting opportunity, and we wanted to create a goal around it. So throughout the 2023-2024 school year, select teachers in pre-K through 3 will be empowered, supported, coached, and supervised as they implement, at minimum, 2 playful learning strategies from the DESE pilot program, Playful Learning Institute, every week from October 2023 through June 2024, as evidenced by the playful learning indicators of increased curiosity, engagement, enjoyment, and connection for learning, culminating in an end-of-pilot survey to determine next steps for the following school year. On the slide, there is a grid that shows the entire playful learning program. From pre-K through 3 at the Reeves, there are 11 classrooms total that are participating, 2 in pre-K through 3, but 3 kindergarten classrooms. It is their choice of how they wanted to implement the PLI program. There's many strategies and activities that are embedding playful activity in everyday learning. This can be story acting, thinking and feedback, studios, which is like centers, except it's more independent guided, and students can choose the activity that is their passion rather than a rotation station. And this year we have pre-K taking on the full focus curriculum, which is in collaboration with Boston Public Schools. And they have had great success, and they love it, and they actually started sharing their joys of it with the other preschool classrooms from the ECP. Our kindergarten through 2nd grade have taken on 2 science units and have implemented studios, story acting, in collaboration actually with Noah Thomas from the high school, from the drama department, coming in and helping coaching some of our K through 3 students of how to act out their stories, and it's been very fun to watch. And then 3rd grade has implemented community meeting and story acting, as well as thinking and feedback. And we have a coach that comes once a week, every Tuesday, from the Playful Learning Institute through DESE, and they come into classrooms, support teachers, model how to do story acting, and the next step in the process is to teach the evaluators how to evaluate playful learning. And that is Playful Learning at the Reeves.
Excellent. Scarlett.
How was the Reeves selected?
It was a grant that you had to submit.
Ms. Jelly and I applied last year together, and the Reeves was selected, which was great. And Matt has been great on taking it on, because I will say that it is not a light grant lift, and there's a lot of kind of measurables and things that Matt has really had to do as part of the building, and has done a really nice job. So.
Right, so it would make sense that you integrate it as a goal.
Yes, it's a very big lift.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yes. He was not handed something light to take on.
Right.
Especially with 11 classrooms taking it on.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It's
great.
nice because I think one of the reasons we were selected is because we hold such a large preschool program with K through 3.
Yeah.
So one of the requirements is that you had to implement it pre-K to 3. And so the Reeves offered a really great site for us to be able to do that work, because we had, the ability to do so. And I know that when we were doing this last year, we spoke to all the teachers beforehand to make sure that they wanted to do
Right.
it, because again, they attend a lot of kind of additional professional learning for
Yeah.
it. But what is nice about it is, and I mean, Matt knows more than I do for sure, is that you can layer it on top of anything. It is not a set curriculum. It's instructional strategies. And so I think as we get kind of to the end of the year, it will give us the opportunity to see if the Reeves wants to share that kind of joy with other buildings, or if it was a great thing that they learned, but that's all we're doing with it. We'll kind of see where we land.
The feedback has been great from the preschool teachers. They really are enjoying it.
So I think from a culture standpoint, it's a really nice thing to have an initiative that was able to tie both, because I think that the pre-K and then the K-5 world don't always get to kind of be together, and it's nice that it was able to be something that kind of bridged that.
Well, I know there's a lot of research that says that play is the best learning opportunities for language development, and I think there's a movement towards that, and you're both nodding because you already know that way more than I do, so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so since it's part of the DESI initiative, will you get the result, like, how did the Woburn School do compared to the other schools involved? So we could see some things we might have done better than them, but some things we could learn from how other schools.
So I'm not really sure how the evaluation is going to be
Okay.
going from our school compared to others.
Okay.
I think they'll be doing a lot of surveying with our staff and students to find out how successful the implementation was.
Okay.
We'll kind of visit it as a school to find out how well it was received by staff
Yep.
and how well the teaching of it
Mm-hmm.
affects the following year.
Okay.
Because we want the students to be able to continue their growth.
Right.
But it's a lot of self-assessment, I believe.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I think, too,
Yep.
that the reason that DESI took this on is that all of Boston Public Schools took this on and
Yep.
saw what was a pretty significant increase, and I think in a lot of different measurables. And so one of the reasons, too, that they only take 7 schools is because, I mean, and again, you know, you can speak about, but like the coaching that the building gets in order to implement this with fidelity and implementation is a lot.
I will share, we did have a virtual statewide kind of Google Meet
Yeah.
with all K met, all the first, and all the admin team met. And when meeting with the admin team, it was very clear that the Reeves is very successful
Okay.
with this.
And would it, is this something, it's good to participate in pilot programs, but you also want to participate in programs that are going to be sustainable once the state says, oh, thank you for the information. So do you think this is something, again, probably won't know until the end, but, what needs we'd have to do as a school committee to support a program if we find it's effective?
Sure. Well, depending on how everything goes,
Right.
DESI's analysis, we have so many strategies that whether this continues or not, staff are going to be using them. And we can support them in the implementation with the curriculum that Woburn decides.
Thank you.
But we'll keep in touch.
And I was going to say that one of the kind of things that was, I guess, appealing for the application is that the curriculum itself is completely free.
Okay.
So it's an open resource.
Yep.
The cost of programming is around materials. So the bulk of what we purchase is actually just all material based.
Yep.
And so the implementation part, I guess, like the bulk of cost, which would be the curriculum part, is an open resource. We
Yep.
wouldn't have to
Okay.
purchase any of that.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else?
Congratulate the administration for, that's the kind of program you want to be involved in, because we don't want to have something new that works, and then we find out we can't support it, because it's disappointing to the students and the teachers. So appreciate the administration, taking that broad view.
Thank you.
So I assume Mr. Clark's up next.
Good time while we're talking about DESI. Our goal has been, and will continue to be, our collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club of Woburn. They get a 21st Century grant to provide free after-school care. And they've expanded. It started at the Shamrock. Our relationship with the Boys and Girls Club goes back before me, so more than 18, 20 years we've had that collaboration, and they've been an amazing community partner. I can't imagine the Shamrock without them. That's just how ingrained they've become in what we do. So they've expanded, and so it's now we're at the Malcolm Light, at the Shamrock, and in the Alta Vesta running the free After the Bell program. So it's an amazing program. We collect our data through DESI's required SEO. And I have to say, I give a real shout out to the teachers. The SEO is a fairly long survey, and my teachers do it without complaint. They're happy to do it. The process begins in October, late September, when the Boys and Girls Club asks me to ask the teachers which of their students are interested in this program. So the kids that our teachers feel need it most are prioritized right from step one, which is how it should be. It's amazing. And again, it's free. It's 4 days a week. The youngest students in kindergarten and grade 1 are offered 2 days a week. opposite two days, and everyone else has the option to participate in 4 days a week. So, shout out to Allison McDaniel, who has been running this program for as long as I can remember. Shamrock family. They do, Boys and Girls Club does a great job. They're also a member of our school council. They're our community members. So.
Awesome.
Excellent. Any other questions?
No, that's great.
Dr. Wilson?
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything the Boys and Girls Club, and I know part of the issue is trying to find staff to do that, and so, hopefully, maybe we can work with the high school graduates, maybe that are interested in preschool, things like that. This would be a good transition if they're going to Middlesex community part-time, then they could come and help, but really kind of raise awareness at the high school level that there are positions at the Boys and Girls Club to help students, and it's a good way for a student that's interested in trying to get into the preschool field or even to the elementary to experience it firsthand, see if that's the path they want to take, earn a little money while they're going to community schools and stuff like that.
So it's not a goal, but it's an opportunity
Yeah.
to talk about the Before the Bell program that runs, which
Yeah.
does this. Do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about
so
that?
Before the Bell is amazing. When we first started this program, I believe Boys and Girls Club was working with Patricia at the high school and created a class for high school juniors and seniors, mostly seniors, and they run like a health and wellness class, and they come in the morning before school, and they are working with our kids. So there is a member of the Boys and Girls Club there. There's staff there, but it's really the high school kids who plan these lessons, go in, play with the kids, and they get free breakfast with our students, and they come in, and they're just making incredible connections. And it's a great feeder program for all we do with kids.
Yeah. So like one step before the school, then you graduate from Woburn High, do the after-school thing while you're getting your teaching degree, and then you come back and you support the community. Perfect circle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
And really, I mean, that's what Boys and Girls Club does, right? Building that system,
Yep.
people to work in the community.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, and I think that was the last. Is that right? Thank all the principals for coming in and doing that. Appreciate all the hard work behind all the papers.
We have to vote on.
Oh, we got another question?
No, it's not for them. It's more directed at the administration and committee. I've sat through a number of these things, and they're all exciting, but I can't say I've ever seen what the end results are for these activities. So I think it would be important for the committee, and I don't need the principals to come back, but say in September, here's what happened with all these activities. Some worked out, some didn't. You don't have to be afraid that things don't work out, but just let us know this really worked. We're going to spread it to the other schools, things like that, just so we can see the outcomes that we're hearing about, because they're exciting, but, the committee might not know what the actual outcome at the end of the year was, so that's just a suggestion. Okay.
Well, the literacy plan will be implemented, we'll be reviewing that.
Right.
All right, excellent. All right, moving on to...
We need to vote those.
What's that?
And we have to vote.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We have to vote on.
Are we done with the presentation?
Yes.
Just an overall? Okay.
I don't think, I thought the only one was the height, but maybe we
You
don't.
can vote. I
Yeah,
didn't
vote.
ask you to
I
vote.
Can't hurt. All right, so...
Make a motion
to
to
accept-
vote, accept all the school improvement plans collectively, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as presented.
A motion, we have a second?
Yes,
On
on
the
the
motion?
motion, these clearly took a lot of
I know.
thought and care and
Yeah.
consideration. I really appreciate the work, the tremendous work that's happening at the elementary schools. It's not easy to come here and summarize it, because I know there's a lot more, but I really appreciate it, so I am in favor of voting.
Excellent. So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
There you go. Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the
Yeah, dismissed.
2023 Spring MCAS Update, Assistant Superintendent Courtney Young. We just passed out this, right?
Yep. You don't have to go page by page.
No, you're fine. I just took my tea,
Ellen,
so I should make it through this without a copy of this.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
all righty. So this is our kind of the annual look at the spring MCAS data. I went back and forth. I've looked back on kind of different ways that we've looked at this information, and kind of am prepared to go through what is, I think, kind of a higher level look. But I certainly think as we go through, there are certain areas that are worth maybe looking at more closely, and potentially we can look at this at the subcommittee level at some of them where there might be some more questions, but we can go from there. So I start with really looking at kind of what data means, and this isn't the first time that I've sat here and talked about data with the school committee, and we know that MCAS for us is one measure that guides some of the work that we do. But I use this as an opportunity that it is not the only data that we use, and it is just kind of a part of the puzzle. And so I provided what kind of our different buckets that we're thinking about student outcomes, and that we have our data bucket. We have what that links to in our strategic plan and our strategic initiatives. And then we have the ways that we are supporting and working with teachers. And so that looks at our data meetings, and we are very fortunate now that we are looking at kind of these screening tools that we have not only at the elementary for a long time, but now we've really embedded these screening tools at the middle school and the high school. And so I'll look at it a little bit on the slides going forward, but a lot of what the tools have done have provided us the ability to look at students' MCAS scores then versus screening scores, and also recognize that while some align, there's also a lot that don't, and kind of being able to now kind of triangulate that data together to tell a bigger story. And so the other part is we have our data meetings where we look at data at the elementary level, and then at the middle school we've started our PLCs, which we heard our middle school talk about recently, where our MCAS data as well as our screening data goes in, and really kind of what that means for instruction. And then we also have that same kind of team dynamic that we look at the high school. Alrighty, we can go to the next one. It'll be pretty quick. So I look at this because kind of what data means, and this is really looking at kind of the structure of how it's very outlined and specific to us at the elementary level. And this comes straight out of DESE's dyslexia guidance, which is how we kind of we use in the cycle of data. But that's the same cycle that we use kind of across the board. And really kind of thinking about how MCAS data, as it has come out, was really part of kind of this beginning of the year look. And then we have done certain interventions, certain shifts, and I'll kind of talk about what that looked like. And then again, we go back and re-look. And I will tell you that just as a snippet, we are fortunate that one of the positions that we had been able to get through this past budget process was our reading specialist at the middle school. And they actually just re-gave STAR data. They had students that were grouped with them because of MCAS data, and they just re-gave the STAR data, within just a few, 5 weeks, and students were in the green and like ready to exit them. And so I think it just shows that now that we kind of have these tools that like we're looking at the measures and making decisions, but sometimes it really truly is just like a little something, and we're kind of moving students on. So kind of how those two pieces play together. Alrighty. So just as a kind of, you'll see a lot of screenshots, but Open Architects is the data platform that we started to use last year, where we're able to take all of our data from MCAS and access scores and be able to get really quick, easy dashboards to look at. We have expanded, and I provided a little snapshot of it. Again, if there's kind of more that you want me to dig into, perhaps in a subcommittee, I'm happy to do so. But we now have integrated all of our attendance data, our enrollment data, and then we're going to be launching new dashboards, hopefully in the this upcoming week, that's going to take all of our academic data onto one, so we'll be able to like in one page see by kind of any way we want to disaggregate it. And then we are going to be launching then teacher versions, so teachers have the same platform. So just kind of what we're using to look at this information. So to your point, I'm happy to go each by each. But we have our 3 through 5 ELA, and we're looking at ourselves right about at the state average. I think about our glows and our grows. We are continuing to see that our students in the reading and the language sections in 3 through 5 are well above the state average, and the portion of the ELA MCAS that is below the state, and what I would say is what is kind of bringing this percentage down, is the writing. I think what's important is that really what that's talking about is writing about reading, not necessarily writing skills, which is really looking at kind of the highest level of comprehension. And I can share at the next, at the slide of next steps, kind of what we're doing specific to that. And I did get now, as part of this platform, which I thought was helpful, is this idea of did students' skilled scores improve from the previous year, with 51% of students in 3 through 5 at no and 49% at yes. All right.
So,
yes.
just for, so to better understand it.
Yes.
What's the expectation? Because this may be good, this may be bad, depending on what the expectation is.
It's a hard, I mean, the expectation is that we're doing better each year and that we're seeing growth. It's not, we're the same. We are.
But if I was to
at
take
state
the
average.
5149, I would say that's, don't we expect students to improve, like, you would expect a higher, so I think that's what, sort of as a school committee, we need a perspective.
Sure.
So,
Do I think that it's great? No. Do I think that it's hard? Because I think if I were to just dissect like all the reasons why, right? It's hard. Do we want them to be better? Of course. I guess is the best way for me to answer that. I would like to see the yes number bigger than the no number. I think that for me, I think it's really a matter of what does the data tell us, and what are we able to do to directly make changes, right? For me, the data is not as much about what the number is as much as about, like, does it tell me a story that helps me understand what we need to do better, right? And so when I look at the data that we had, what it very clearly told me was that our writing about reading was the area that kind of brought us down, right? So that goes back into what are the conversations that we're having with grade levels and with teachers, and not just 3 through 5, because I think too that, right, it's not 3, 4, and 5's only job to do this, right? It starts all the way back. And what are we doing to think about it? And I've spent a lot of time walking around with our elementary principals throughout kind of all facets of their day, specifically looking at the literacy block in every elementary school. And the number one conversation we're having is are we writing enough, right? And I think that that's really, for me, what matters more than is the data what it is. Does it point to a reason that we know that we need to focus on? Yes. I think there are some of these where I don't think that answer is as clear, and that's when I would say, like, where do we need to be having those conversations? It's where the data for me doesn't give me a reason why that I would be more concerned. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, but the other question, like for expectation, should I expect that Woburn should be better than the state average? Or, again, based on our makeup of our students, again, because that's what we have. But if I was looking at it as a committee member, should I expect that, if we're above or around with the state average, that's good, or that's not so good?
I think that right now we're looking at 0% from the previous year, and so I would say that like consistent for me would be there. I think that the short answer is that high expectations for me is that we would be doing better than the state average.
And if I can, we of course want to be higher than the state average. I mean, I think setting the state average as a baseline isn't good enough. So we want to exceed the state in all possible categories. I think it's not okay, but it does track with, post-COVID, and this is only a measure in time, right? This is only MCAS, a measure in time post-COVID, one day or a couple days. And so I caution against using MCAS as the only mechanism to determine how well we are doing day-to-day in the school system, and I think you'll see some of the information coming up that unpacks it a little bit more.
And I think it matters what we do with it, and I think you're right. I think it's that balance between it's one day, so you don't want to put too much, but also that there is a reason for the data and that we should be using it to do something. And I think as long as we're finding those ways that it is pushing us to examine areas that we can do better, then I think that's what matters.
Thank you.
All right.
I just had a question. Does, do the MCAS scores reflect in other standardized assessments as well? So
Are our percentages around the same?
Yes.
Depends on which one, and I can't. I'm actually not to jump ahead, but it's helpful if you want to go to Dr. Crowley. So, for example, when I started to go around and look at our composite scores on DIBELS, so we're looking at the percentage was around 47% meeting and exceeding for ELA. We were at around 60% meeting or exceeding on DIBELS for third graders, 60% for fourth graders, which tracks for when we talk about the comprehensive literacy plan, which is our 5% increments. We were around 55%. We got to around about 60% at the end of last year, and then this year I'd expect for us to track at 65%, if not more. And that percentage for me matters more than this percentage. But I also think I go to, like, why are they different? Right. And I think that matters too.
Okay.
But I would say that we do look at them.
I think the other piece that I would add to that is when you look at, as a district, the percentage of students with disabilities.
Yes.
Which, and I didn't look today, but I would say we are probably 23-24%. It's very high right now, and I think we've had an increase in the population of students with disabilities. We have a fairly large number, as we know, of students that have more severe disabilities. And as a district, we work very hard, as Desi encourages us to do, to have everybody take the MCAS that they can. And to really work with that. But I think we also have to factor in just sort of the dynamics of the population that we have as well. That's another piece of the data.
Well, you're not going to get the strengths of a child with a disability from an MCAS test. You're not going to see that resilience, that learning style reflected in that. Okay. Thank you.
You can go back one, Dr. Brown. Again, math 3 through 5 is very similar to our ELA, around the same as we were in the previous year, right around at the state average, and 50% of students improved and 50% of our students did not. So, what's it say? You can go back. Yeah. Thank you. So to your point, Ms. Crowley, really what I was kind of trying to make the story of here is that there's a reason that we look at all the different markers and that we are looking at them against each other. And especially when we start talking about the middle school, a lot of decisions at the beginning of the year are made around MCAS scores, and we're seeing now that we are doing more of our own district screening tools that, there are some that certainly do align and then some that don't.
Right.
Great. That's interesting. Sure. Our science scores, and I have the pleasure this morning of actually being in a 5th grade class in which I was able to see our science coordinator and a 5th grade teacher conducting a pretty cool hands-on experiment. We were melting chocolate and weighing it. And so we are performing above the state and around at the same as last year. And we were in all areas, in all science categories at the elementary level. We were above the state average on all of them. And I will say, just because I went past the math part quickly, measurement and data is consistently the area in which we're seeing our students are struggling. So that's part of the work that we'll be working on. Sure.
So I've heard DIBELS a lot, so I kind of understand that. Yes. But what do we have for monitoring math during the year that corresponds to the DIBELS?
Yeah. So we use the STAR assessment for 6 through 12 for math.
Okay.
And if we're talking, in talking about math, I was just met with the science and math coordinator last week, which we are in the process right now of doing really an actual data dive of our elementary math data over the past 5 years. We are looking at areas of strengths and areas of grow, and we are looking at putting together, using our elementary STEM lead teachers to be examining programming this year, as well as starting kind of our professional learning. And then we will be moving towards new math programming. We waited on starting a new math screener at the elementary level because as we are going to be picking a new math program, if there's a screening tool that goes with that program, we would prefer to keep them together. However, it's probably strongly likely that we would use the same math screener that has been working in 6 through 12 to come down. And I would anticipate us starting the math screener for next fall. Yeah. Alrighty. So when talking with our 7 elementary principals, kind of on how the role that MCAS has in our different buildings, this is a screenshot from one of the principals' staff meetings in which they were looking at the questions and question and item analysis at what kind of areas we 50% or 60% did not get correct, and kind of doing a full data dive. Teacher groups look at our MCAS scores when considering some of our small group instruction, our win block analysis. We will be looking once again at starting some of our after-school tutoring for any MCAS preparation in the spring. And then, as one principal shared, really looking at the bright spots and the ahas, something that they've learned. And I talked a little bit about this before, but this kind of calibrating of walkthroughs, again, I've had the opportunity to be now in every elementary school with every principal through all of our literacy blocks and really looking at kind of small group instruction and what that looks like. And on the next page, just kind of on that part, again, really kind of what the work they're doing around this item analysis. And I think it goes back to kind of like what do we want to see out of the scores? And I think it's really that the data, how are we using the data to improve? And this is, again, a place maybe where we can come back to and I can go into more specifically, but a big part of what all of our principals talked about is just the role that chronic absenteeism has played in our students' achievement. And what this is we now have, as we started with our dashboards, we have the ability now to be looking at students' attendance more quickly. This is just a snapshot of one part. We can disaggregate by really any subgroup, by student, and this is looking at by all the elementary buildings for this school year, but we can also look at how does this trend go from October this year to October last year. Does it look the same? Is it different? We can look at exactly which students there are. To no surprise, Mondays are a hard day to get here, and kind of what are some of the reasons? Are they the same students? The November number looks bigger because it's out of the percentage of days of the month, and so as we've not gotten to all of them yet. And this is looking with the chronic absenteeism threshold of 10%. Okay. Our 6 through 8 ELA, and we had an opportunity actually to spend quite a bit of time with this data as part of, as we shared last week, and I'm very happy that we had kind of already taken this step of being partners with DESE for the tiered literacy and DESE's Inclusive Academy. They've done an extensive item analysis, and the DESE coach was just in last week doing focus groups with teachers and focus groups with students around literacy instruction at our middle schools, as well as walkthroughs. And so we are in the process of, and I think that to your point of like, what are we doing from the data? A lot of what this year's goal is specifically around looking at our 6 through 8 literacy instruction. And what does that look like moving forward? I'm very happy that we've had our reading specialist at both the Kennedy and the Joyce, who are just working with our targeted Tier 2 students and they've been using MCAS scores as now with STAR data, and they are running some really incredible small group instruction for our Tier 2 students that are being identified. I will also tell you that, again, it's not super surprising that it is the writing about reading section for us that is the area that we're struggling with the most. All right, 6 through 8 math. Again, this has been, I think we started to see this decline a little bit last year and then into this year. As part of our PLCs at the middle school, one of the things we're doing right now is a crosswalk of all of our standards and looking at our end of unit assessments. We'll be talking about math even more when I get to the high school. We're in the process now of a math audit at the high school and the purchasing of a new high school math programming, and we are going to be looking at what that means for our middle school math programming as well. So this was just to kind of, again, give a snapshot. This has been looking at our district benchmark grade 7 ELA scores, how we're looking at our data with our STAR data, then looking at our data with our, that we have with MCAS scores. What I will say is that our DIBELS data is trending slightly higher than our MCAS data at the elementary school, I would say we're slightly more consistently aligned with our STAR data and our MCAS scores at the middle school, if that makes sense. So they're showing similar trends.
So how does the data reflect, like you have exceeding and meeting?
Yeah.
How does that relate to proficient? Because that's what you're showing for the MCAS.
Yeah. So exceeding and meeting, how does it relate to?
Proficient, yeah, because I assume that's your district, because you're showing us in the MCAS,
Yeah.
the proficient.
Yes.
And
So
this, I assume, is sort of your STARS, is this your STARS data, or is this?
That's STAR data above,
Yeah.
so green is your at or above benchmark, and then anything that's blue, yellow, or red is
Yeah,
not.
but you're switching colors, because
I know.
I'm going down to
Yeah.
the thing. So
Great.
if you take the blue on the lower graph.
Yes.
And you have the dark blue and the light blue.
Yes.
How does that, because they have two different words, they have exceeding and meeting.
Yes.
Which is neither proficient, it's not the same word as proficient.
So I would consider meeting and exceeding as all proficient.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And I think that what we talk about a lot, and I think that right now, and we focus so much on kind of needing to move, we're trying to move the red needle, and we're trying to move the gray needle, but a lot of the conversations that we're trying to have too is what do we need to do to move the light blue to the dark blue, because I think that percentage, that 5%, 5 and 4, that percentage is actually the number that I think is smaller than we could be, right? And so I think we talk a lot about trying to move the red and the gray, but a lot of the conversations that we're trying to have right now, and we just had this conversation especially about what we're doing in terms of looking at our kind of the algebra standards at the middle school, is what are we doing to ensure that we are making that light blue is actually getting more of our dark blue. Yeah. Okay. Our science data for last year, and I'll say it's our grade 8 science data is a bit of an outlier because our 5 and our 10 are a little bit different. In the science department, they through their PLCs have been going through and doing a bit of analysis. Ultimately, the life science data is that the life science is what brought that piece down. I don't kind of looking backwards. I'm not sure if it's the progression, and perhaps like the life science was heavily in grade 6, and that was, they weren't there for that portion of it. I don't know if it's kind of we're still seeing some of the gaps that students have in some of these standards. But ultimately, all other standards were above the state. So it's only our life science standards that brought that percentage down. And again, just a snapshot of what we're looking at around for our absenteeism at the middle schools. And I will say that when the middle school principals come in to do their school improvement plans, you'll hear them talk a lot about this. because it is something that they are really focused on this year. And so, for example, at the Kennedy, they've established an attendance committee that's going to be working on strategies for kind of bringing down chronic absenteeism. We have both of our reading specialists at both of our middle schools. We are working right now to have our dashboards that will be accessible to our class, all of our educators at the middle school, so they'll be able to kind of more readily look at the data and kind of disaggregate which students need what. We are looking and still using IXL to be targeting for personalized learning, and then we will be looking at, in second semester, any extra math classes. We play around with schedules for any of our students that could use extra math classes prior to the MCAS assessment. And those will be continuing. All right. At the high school, that should just say 10, which is but our ELA continues to be above the state average. And however, again, in terms of our commonalities, our reading scores are consistently much higher above the state average, and our writing about the reading is a little bit lower. And our math scores, and this is kind of to the point in which we talked about, we have a meeting actually, I believe, next week where we're going to be investigating a new math program at the high school. And our high school science, we are continue to be above the state average. It's a slight decrease, but not significant. And again, our attendance at the high school. Yeah. So at the high school, sorry, after my last thing, I'll leave this to you if you want to go one more slide. At the high school, our instructional leadership team has been working on instructional rounds where they're examining all the instructional practices to ensure consistency. One of these areas is really looking at what standards we're teaching, and so that's a big part of what they've been doing in response to kind of MCAS data as a whole. They're currently examining class placement and process, as well as class offerings at the high school. We are working especially on our dashboards for teachers to support their instructional planning, and the focus at the high school, Mr. Raston talked a lot about evaluation feedback and professional development that's tied directly to the instructional areas and focuses that they are disaggregating from the data. Sorry.
Yep. So I was just going to comment, the chronic absenteeism at the high school, but there wasn't any action plan on that, as opposed to the middle school where it was less, but this is 21% at the high school.
So I would, and Mr. Raskin would be able to speak about it more. I know that they are doing a lot of work around identifying the students, and I know that, again, Ms. Ryan can speak to it more. Part of the work that she'll be doing with all of our leadership team this week is around looking at attendance and kind of the work that we're going to be doing with families. And while I didn't mention it, I assure you that he has a plan. Yes.
Because, just looking at the net, it's obviously there's a select group of students that are creating the chronic absenteeism for whatever reason. And so
I would say that, again, and this is where, too, we can have this conversation, anything that we want to kind of take more to the subcommittee level, but I think that, with the more data that we have, I certainly can speak about, in that level, really, like, the subgroups that we're seeing, because I think there are absolutely trends, and I think there are absolutely things that we can be doing to be developing, really targeted interventions based off of the trends that we're seeing.
So just as a general observation, so if I was looking at this big picture, we got a lot of influx for COVID money to support the students and help prevent what it looks to me, if you look at this data here, is that we stabilized with all that COVID money, but we haven't been able to reverse or regain traction. So sort of a thought thing, how we, COVID money is ending, how can we reverse the trend? Because we haven't gone back to where we were before, it looks like, looking at the data. Just a general overview.
I guess I would say two pieces. One, I would say the whole state hasn't.
Right.
And two, I would say that it's really hard when you're looking at a big bucket,
Yeah.
right? And I think that if we were to go down into the granular of
Yeah.
like and I think about especially, I look at the middle school and how many students, just by having tier 2 kind of interventions, has already kind of moved forward, and students who would have, kind of fallen behind. I think that, to say that it was going to take a second to stabilize, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tier 2 structure that we have really worked hard on is quite good, and I think it is helping a lot of students that had learning loss in the pandemic. And I think the other piece, and when I talk about the special education students, we have to keep in mind that they represent almost a quarter of our population, and these are students that lost a lot during the pandemic. And as we are really working hard to strengthen our programs, and when we come forward with different requests for different things, and the additional programming that we've put in the buildings, we're really trying to target these populations to give them a boost and to give them the best instruction that we possibly can. And some of this it is going to take time. But I do think these tools and Open Architect, it's incredible because it gives us so much more information that it helps us to identify where the gaps are and what to target. And so I think this will be really helpful moving forward.
So that leads me to my other question. So, and something I've talked about a lot is like, would it be possible to set up for the school committee an open architecture page so they could see trends, so that members could look and see, here's what's happening, and then if they wanted to ask for, a presentation on this or that, as opposed to waiting for your presentation, because your time, valuable. But that way, the committee or the curriculum subcommittee could use it as a basis of trying to decide, okay, we're looking at the absenteeism, let's have a discussion about absenteeism, whatnot, because as you said, there's a lot of things there, and I think maybe having the committee have eyes on that independently, maybe help drive some of the discussions, future meetings.
You can talk.
Obviously, I'm not going to be here to see it, but I'm data-driven, but but I think it just might be useful for the committee to be able to see things and think about them, not just at the moment when we're looking at them, but, seeing it at night, look at it, and then think about it.
I actually wanted to respond to your previous question about how come we're not back to where we were. I forget exactly how you framed it.
No, I just said we stabilized,
yeah, we
but what can we
stabilized,
do now that we don't have the
so,
funds?
I guess part of, we're talking about academic achievement.
Yeah.
One of the things, and learning loss, but one of the things that I think we should factor in not only is the special education, but the social emotional learning that and the challenges that our teachers are facing every day. I really think that our kids coming out of the pandemic not only have learning loss, but have struggled coming back into regular school, if you will. And I think our teachers have done a great job in meeting that need and the gaps that exist. And so I don't want to not talk a little, just briefly, about this SEL component of data that's not represented here, but give the staff the credit that they deserve, because we are, we have mitigated, if you will, and we'll trend back up.
Dr. Crowley, to that point, the GAIN program at the high school is the feedback has been very, very high. The students are doing very well, and I think when we look at things like the absenteeism at the high school, it is social emotional programs that also are really helping to keep our kids in school and to improve this. And so I think a lot of it is the strength of some of our programs and really working hard to keep them, strong.
I just have one observation as far as, MCAS is great, and John loves this stuff for the data, and it is just a small snapshot, but we're better than the state on one science in grade 5. And that is just extremely disappointing to me, because I think that we should be better than, the state average, because other cities and
High
towns.
school ELA.
High school,
Yeah.
high school stuff.
And high school ELA and science.
Okay, but every town has special education students. Every town went through COVID. Every town went through. So, I mean, we just need to do better at this stuff. And again, it's one day, but it's disappointing to see what we had for the results of this. But we will get better. We will do better. And hopefully, we'll all be there and working together to get through every day in the classroom. So hopefully this will work. So I just don't want people to be making up excuses for why we're not doing better, because we can do better, and we will do better. So, okay.
Cool, everyone good?
Thank
you very much.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work.
Actually,
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just add one thing.
Yes.
I do want to acknowledge that, part of this, the literacy, Tom Brown's literacy plan is a response to this data and is a response to where we're seeing. And I don't want that to go unrecognized as well, in terms of the work that you've already been doing to try to correct where we are and think about where we're going. So just wanted to mention that as an appreciation to administration and to the teachers who are carrying it out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Set? All right, so maybe we can grab the screen light back on?
Yeah.
Just to clean up the room. All right, next up is the review of the superintendent's goals for 2022-23. Superintendent Matt Crowley.
So I just asked Ms. McLeod to make the hard copy for you. You looked at these last year. I just wanted to put them in front of you. I'll go through them briefly. And I believe on the 29th, there'll be an evaluation, and I will submit to you all the evidence typically that I do digitally. So I will get that to you hopefully by Sunday. We have a busy week. Just for to review these quickly, last year's goals, one of the district goals was to operationalize the strategic plan, which we clearly we've started doing. The action plans are part of that. Again, evidence will support this work. Another district goal was to build the tiered systems of support that you just heard about. And again, what those look like, I will provide evidence, but also culturally and linguistically supportive. And again, you heard that tonight. So that wasn't a plant. That was part of what we're doing. Another district goal was last year to ensure that our budget process was focused on district priorities and objectives, and all of us, I think, remember fondly that process. So again, I will provide, some evidence of that. The other relative to budget, pursue relevant grant opportunities, and we heard again tonight some of that work that's happened. So. Student learning last year was to work to establish a common understanding around deeper learning and effective instructional practices. And so I believe we're successful in doing that last year. We'll supply really the instructional guide. I think you saw that last year, but that was really a highlight of this goal. So something we're proud of. And then the professional practice goal from last year was to support continuing to create a culture that reflects and embraces the voices, perspectives, and the differences arising from our diverse community. And one of the things that we did as a district leadership team was participate in the Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity Initiative. We did that last year as a leadership team, and we're continuing our work with DESE this year around this issue as well. So again, I will submit the evidence. I just wanted you to kind of understand the context of it, and I'll get that to you by Monday. Is that okay?
Excellent.
Sure.
Any questions on that?
Light reading over
It'd be a
Thanksgiving.
nice conversational piece of it.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, yeah. Did you have family that board?
So,
No questions on that?
Yep.
thank you.
All right. Next up is a vote to approve the JFK school nurse, which is one of the things we do as a committee.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resume is there if anyone wanted to
She can utilize her skills
Yeah.
in the new job.
There you go. All right, next up are the subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Subcommittee did not meet. We're meeting before the next school committee meeting on the 29th.
Excellent. Communications Policy Subcommittee. Who's that?
That's Colleen, she's
I was going to say, I thought it was Colleen.
They're a C.
The what?
A C. She's on the phone.
Yeah.
Curriculum and Data Trends Subcommittee.
We have not met, but it sounds from this meeting like we might have a couple topics for potentially Dr. Wells' final curriculum
We have
subcommittee.
one more.
Personnel Subcommittee.
We
please.
did not meet.
Resource and Capital Planning
met.
Subcommittee.
Yep.
Yes, I think we did.
On the way there.
All right, I'm going to try to be as concise as possible. Resources and Capital Planning Subcommittee met today. My notes are tough, but today, November 14th, 4 p.m., Patricia Chisholm was here, Andrew Lipsett, Maureen Ryan, Courtney Young, Dr. Matt Crowley, and Danisco Designs, represented by Donna Danisco. We went over the feasibility study, focusing solely on the executive summary of the feasibility study. There were two things that the school committee I want to note from my minutes, is that there's two aspects of the feasibility study. Ongoing improvements of buildings, and then the 4 older buildings, what to do with them. So there's two things, not just building new buildings, but also focusing on the improvements and the maintenance of our older buildings, newer buildings, older buildings, whatever. Okay.
Glass half.
The feasibility study is education-centered. It's not just looking at buildings from a cold perspective. It's actually looking at the education system and how it's impacted by the buildings themselves, and knowing that buildings have a direct relationship to student learning. Okay, get to it, Ellen. All right, there are options that the school committee will be considering. Option number 1 is, hang on one second. Okay, there's elementary schools. There's 2 older elementary schools. Option number 1 is combining the Alta Vesta in the Linscott. Option number 2 is just building a new Alta Vesta and closing down the Linscott and redistricting those students. Option number 3 is just straight up building an early childhood program at the Reeves or the Joyce with no changing of the buildings, only except to improve them. And then option number 4 is building a new school, combining the Alta Vesta and the Linscott, and then adding an early childhood center onto it. There are middle school options. Did I mention? Yes, so building a new early childhood center at the Reeves or the Joyce is also an option too. That would free up space and have certain impacts. Middle school option number 1 is building a science lab and building a space mine at the Joyce, which is really just creating more space at the Joyce by moving central admin out of the office. Option number 2 is renovating both the Joyce and the Kennedy. Option number 3 is consolidating the Joyce and the Kennedy and adding an early childhood center. Consolidating the Joyce and the Kennedy, or consolidating the Joyce and the Kennedy and adding an early childhood center. So that is a very brief aspect of the various options that are in the feasibility study, with the various levels of expense attached to them. Obviously, the resource subcommittee did not make any final decisions.
Hard to believe.
We just looked at it as this amazing report came to us. It's about 1,000 pages, I think. And these are simply the options in which the school committee can begin dialogue on. The most expensive option, of course, is consolidating the Joyce and the Kennedy and adding an early childhood center at the Joyce/Kennedy new school, and that is about $220 million. And the least expensive option is building an early childhood program freestanding at the land at the Reeves or the Joyce, but we may not be able to get full funding for that because it doesn't involve a reconstruction of a school. And that's the feasibility study that we talked about.
In a nutshell.
Does anyone have any questions?
John.
Green pen, yes?
I couldn't see your hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Wells.
No, it was...
I was just looking at her.
The other thing, so nothing was mentioned about the old Wyman, so I assume...
Yes, Dr. Wells, thank you. The old Wyman is essentially too expensive to bring back online. Not useful for the purposes of education, and it's just expensive to either renovate it or to use it. So we didn't do a deep dive into it, actually, because it didn't seem that it was even feasible to use it for any purpose. There was very brief conversations about the potential value of the Wyman, the old Wyman, but there was no recommendation attached to the Wyman in the options for the use of education programming purposes.
So if that was the case, and, I'm not saying we necessarily, but that is usually the indication that it's no longer viable for an educational facility, and that's usually the time the school committee determines that it's time to hand it over to the city.
Yes, there was no talk about that specifically because letting go of an asset.
Well, we're not letting, the city's not letting go, we're letting go, but if it sounds like it's not an educational asset, then it really needs to go to the city, take it off our books, and let them decide what's best for the city.
Yeah, I have to say that the resource subcommittee did not go there. We were really focusing on trying to process the North Woburn elementary school needs and also the middle school. Really trying to come to terms with what we're going to possibly do.
But I just add that maybe, I'm not saying it has to be done before I leave, but at some point before the new budget, you definitely, if it's not going to have educational purposes, it should be taken from the books and sent back to the city. Thank them for the use of the building over these many years.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Wells. That's an excellent point. I think that this feasibility study is going to be an ongoing conversation, and that's an excellent point to take back to my subcommittee. I think that what I also want that the resource subcommittee spoke about is the fact that this study was very child-centered. It was very detailed in terms of our special education programming, making sure that they have the right service, the right spaces, a really thoughtful approach to what would be the least disruptive to our students. For instance, giving us the option of building a new middle school while the middle schools are in full operation is an option, right? So, and also the option given to us that we would redistrict the students from the Linscott. It didn't go over well with the resource subcommittee, this idea, but it is an idea floating out there that it is a way to utilize, maximize our space. So it was this feasibility study, we all concurred, was an excellent use of taxpayer money, an excellent deep dive into our buildings. And as I mentioned first in the beginning of my presentation, we didn't necessarily crack open the needs of our newer, newer buildings. The Malcolm White, the Reeves, the Goodyear, the Harold Wyman to some extent. They also have needs.
Yeah, the high school.
Last thing I want to mention that was an important point that we all sort of made eye contact with about was keeping the buildings themselves, the older buildings, have needs that are also expensive. To just deal with the immediate needs of the buildings is $70 million or so. So, we really have great opportunity to have these great conversations. Stop talking. Did you have
Any questions?
Less a question than just sort of to add on. Just sort of follow up on Ms. Crowley's last point. One thing that I think came through loud and clear is that there's a really, really deep cost to not acting here. That, the middle schools, just to really keep them operational right now, would cost something. I think the number was $80 million, right? We look at a similarly high cost when we're talking about continuing to operate at the Alta Vesta and Linscott. just to make sure that these spaces are brought up to where our students need them to be, so that we're providing a safe and supportive environment for our kids. I was really gratified also that, I think we had 4 current members of the city council in attendance, including the mayor-elect, which, it makes me hopeful that we're going to have a collaborative process with this, to Dr. Wells' point, thinking about the old Wyman and the proper transfer of that to the city, and how we might also be able to benefit from that, right? How can that money maybe be used to support some of the projects that we may elect to go with? But yeah, I mean, Ms. Crowley is right. This is a very impressive study. It's also one that points us to a lot of work that we're going to have over the coming year, 2 years, 3 years, decade, right? I mean, this is going to be a very significant set of projects that's going to determine the future of the Woburn Public Schools. So I was glad to see the amount of detail that went into it, the considerations of all of the options, really thinking about how the public is going to receive this. All of that, I think, was really, really beneficial as we were wading through all of the options.
And clearly, administration spent a lot of time. I mean, the clear picture of Woburn Public Schools and our needs was so obvious. I mean, the feasibility study had to be looked at again because of the influx of new students that happened at the end of the summer. So every detail was really considered very thoughtfully. So
they knew us, and that was good.
And a couple of things that our buildings, even though they are aging, some of them, the maintenance of them, the actual physical work being done by custodians was a huge compliment. I thought that was great. So overall, I think that this, we didn't actually make any votes, or we don't have any recommendations except to close the file, jaw dropping, and then just keep processing this information, involve the city to the extent possible, and at some point do 2 things. 1 is decide where we want to put priorities, and 2 is develop a long-term capital improvement plan that will be followed throughout the next few years. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think the other important thing, and I don't know when exactly, but to release it to the public, I think that there should be a school committee presentation, maybe a joint school committee, city council presentation in the not-too-distant future, to just, a meeting just to do this presentation, so that the community can see where all the things, so everybody's kept aware.
So the plan is for the NISCO to come to the meeting on the 29th.
Okay.
And do a presentation on the 29th.
But I would agree with Dr. Wells. I think, being able, I'm sorry, Mrs. Chisholm.
Go ahead.
Being able to do at least some kind of a joint meeting with the council, I think would be a really smart move in terms of moving forward with it.
So maybe that at the 29th, we can invite them to come. They were here, some of them tonight anyway, but I just think that it's important that we, keep in mind the fact that the North Woburn, the Altabest and Linscomb are the only 2 elementaries that don't have a new school. I know they have smaller class sizes, and that's important, but they're a part of us too. So we need to make sure that we keep in mind that we need to promise them the same things we gave to every other district, schools that we have. But the middle schools also are aging, and they really need to be done. So it's tough, but it's going to be a big bite, and I think that we have to listen to the community and have to ask for feedback. So it will be our decision to do, but at the same time, I think it's important. It's going to be a lot of money. There's a $200 million number out there for the middle school, so it's going to be big dollars, and we have to be ready to provide the feedback for that.
One question I have, I wasn't at the meeting, of course, is the numbers that they gave, the feasibility study shows, is that current number?
Yes.
So that's not saying if it's a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan?
No,
I think
it was out.
Do they?
To 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, but still, we're not talking, I'm talking
There's
5
a
years
couple
from
of.
We will be lucky to even be in any process in
That's what I'm saying.
2025.
So the
yeah.
numbers could even be higher based on when it actually, some
And
of
it
the
depends on
projects.
what MSBA gives it to us too. So.
I mean, the costs have gone up considerably since the Harold Wyman was built. The Harold Wyman was cheap. There's just been
Oh, yeah.
whole development of costs and multiple supplies and everything that makes this even more expensive. And so therefore, MBSA?
MSBA.
MSBA was fully participated in the building of the Earl Wyman, and there could be some concerns with them not being able to fully reimburse us for the costs of it.
Although MSBA has increased their
Exactly.
reimbursement, but not enough to cover what we're
Right.
looking at right now.
So that's just another thing we need to think about. But, you know,
So the plan for the 29th is to have this on the agenda
yes.
and potentially, or not, since they're invited at any time, the council can come, but we'll maybe make it a little more formal, but we have other things on that. It's not a special meeting for this.
No.
And I, again, we had a 2-hour resources meeting, and we got through like the option.
Right.
So I think it's just,
Not saying overview or.
yeah, I don't, we can't have a 2-hour presentation at a
Right.
regular
Yeah,
meeting.
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So maybe just, 20 minutes.
I think the options, I think, and,
Yeah.
and I think maybe just, I hate to say it, limit the questions and just.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, no, I know, because.
Second.
No,
So you're saying we're waiting till the new year?
no, I'm saying, just, this is an informational
Only,
session.
yeah.
It's not,
Yes.
not going to answer, because if anybody's to ask questions, we could go on all night.
Oh,
because-
if that's in somewhere in the middle anyways,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be questions allowed, technically.
Well, there's always questions
Well,
allowed
for
by
us.
the committee.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
You meant
I'm
us, I thought
saying-
you meant from the public.
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't, we can't even get there that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, we just take it in as an informational session, so the public knows what's going on, the city council knows what's going on, and then it's going to be a deep dive later in the year. And then there can be, you can take each option at a meeting and, delve into it greatly.
I was going to say something else
Yep.
about that.
Yeah.
real quick on the
Kendra
meeting.
has a
Yeah, it was, so yeah, Andrew.
Just to that end, I mean, I agree. I'm a little hesitant to just sort of present rapidly these options to the public without, we got so much context that I think was really, really important to understanding these options at that meeting. So yeah, I mean, I think an overview is good as long as we have a really clear plan to do a public rollout that is going to involve the council, that is going to present that context, that's going to really make sure the public understands not just what the options are, but how we arrived at that, and especially that idea of, what's the cost of doing nothing here, right?
No, I think you allocate an hour for the presentation, and then we know the meeting's going to go, we do the first hour for the presentation, and then we do our regular business after that. It's going to be a little later.
Yeah. I mean, the special meeting might not be out of line here.
Always willing
All
to
right,
the next meeting.
but the question earlier was getting it to the public sooner than later, having it available. So it's obviously electronic, put it on the website. Is that something that we want to do? Well, it's public at this
So
point.
she's going to make a couple changes to the presentation today.
Danisco.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Okay.
then the other thing I spoke to Donna Danisco about was doing a public forum. She offered to come and do that kind of presentation publicly, not to elected officials only, but to any community member. So that was something that she alluded to being open to.
I think that would be excellent once we get down to just a couple of different options.
Yeah.
Because once we let up to all 7 or whatever she gave us tonight, it would be, hard to do. Because, but point of reference, like the Harold Wyman was $28 million to be built, and she said if we do the Linsky Delta Vesta combination, it would be somewhere around about $80 million. So,
Imagine that.
Improvements.
Wow.
On the middle school.
so it's
Also
grown
need to-
that
Right,
much.
and
is-
an early childhood center.
Yeah.
in early
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, it's definitely going to be a lot of opinions, what people want
Right.
as elected
Right.
officials. Obviously, we want that input, but we also,
This is
Well,
the
the
work
first,
together to
this is
come
the
up with
first
some.
view for people.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
There were some options that I think were not
Doable.
Feasible.
sit well with us.
Yeah.
So that's we might be able to dispose of a couple options. Then I don't know.
But I'm not sure if I get my answer. So are we making this public electronically through the website with a link or something, where people can scroll through 1,000 pages if they want?
I think, why don't we wait until the next meeting when we have the public presentation?
Okay.
because they're making corrections.
Right.
Okay,
No,
so
you're
there are
putting it out.
corrections, and that's why
Yeah.
we're hesitant to
Yeah.
put it out there.
Yeah.
This is some, okay.
Well, this Danisco had slides, which really summarized it nicely.
Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
one of
All right.
those. Okay.
All right, so we're good with that. I think we have. Resource, anything else?
Nope.
No,
You
that was
didn't do
enough.
anything else?
That's
all?
it?
Yeah. Jeez.
All right, so that's good. Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee.
Have not met. We hope to meet prior to the next meeting.
All right, on to correspondence. I did get,
I thought at this time, maybe the committee could congratulate the superintendent.
Oh, actually, that was on my list.
Okay.
Ellen was going to do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
John.
myself and Ms. Chisholm, as
know you
well
had
as Ms. Ryan and Ms. Young, and Ms. Junkins, and Mayor Galvin and Dr. Crowley, we went to the Massachusetts Partnerships for Youth, but we only went for 10 minutes to observe Dr. Crowley achieve the Dr. Patrick Schnettini Memorial Award based on his academic advocacy, his family engagement, and his success here in Woburn. It's a very prestigious award. It's only given once a year. He was nominated by Dr. Eric Conti, a superintendent in Burlington, and it was a very, very nice honor and a very excellent reflection on the city of Woburn.
Great. Congratulations. Photos, I assume?
Yes, yes.
There were a couple
All right,
of
good.
pictures.
And, you know,
I have it all on video if you want to see.
There you go.
And I think somebody can correct me, but I don't remember a previous superintendent receiving a distinction to this extent.
Not that I'm
In
aware of, no.
my 25 almost years, so it really is a reflection on his work, but also the respect that his colleagues have for him. So, thank you.
Okay.
I would say thank you. And I don't do it alone, so thank you to the committee, to the team that came today. So I appreciate all the support here in Woburn, so thank you.
The conference was with superintendents, but also law enforcement,
Yeah.
collaboration based on school safety. And it was
Excellent.
Yeah. Maureen, you want to?
It was quite good, actually. And maybe it's something that I will put on our next subcommittee meeting, and we can talk about some of the different pieces and things that maybe we will bring to this meeting.
And I think we should highlight it on our website. I don't know who gets that, Hey, good. I'll make a motion that a superintendent's award be recognized on the school website.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Excellent. All right, we'll take care of that somehow. All right, correspondence otherwise, that was one, that was the first one, that's what I was getting at. I did get a bunch of emails, I'll name the names and make the statement like I usually do, which is they come electronically, they will be on the server. So it's Sandra Masella, I apologize if I get it wrong, Lindsay Sheehan, Linda Prisco, Liz Gooden, Melissa Brimmer, Sharon Crispo, Patrice O'Keefe, and Ryan, looks like Graybert, regarding the DC trip through the Kennedy Middle School. There was interest in that. I did reach out to Carl Nelson myself, just because I was getting it as a chair, a lot of people asking about the trip. He did send, and everyone should have it in their packet, a proposed 2024 eighth grade trip to Washington, D.C. with pretty extensive information on what's going to happen and bits of information on substitutes needed, fundraising, so on and so forth. They've done the trip in the past. We did stop them for a while, and our policy, maybe someone can correct me a little bit more, does say, it does come down to the potential superintendent or the school committee vote, I believe, if we decide to do that. I be straight out, I'm in favor of the trip, and I'm interested in pursuing it. We're going to put this on to the next agenda, and I don't know if we're voting then, or what's the plan?
Well, I think what I would suggest, but
Yeah.
I don't know when Ms. Cormier is returning, it would have been good to send it to her subcommittee to see if it's in compliance with our policy. And if it is, then we move forward. If it isn't, we need more information, because we can, policies are there to be suspended if the committee so desires, but it's not always a great idea. But I think we do have to look at what our policy says and how this relates to our policy.
When is she, does anyone know when the date she's back by the next meeting?
I don't know the specific.
I think she's home this week.
Yeah.
So she'll be back by the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So I would recommend we send it for review at the policy subcommittee.
Okay. I do know that they normally start this if it was approved, meaning it wasn't changed in our policy, usually in September, right after school starts, to do the fundraising and all that. They're a little behind the 8 ball, but I do want to make sure that, everyone gets a chance to read it. I know Colleen will get a copy. It's in her packet, but I'll forward this to her ahead of time, just so she can have it and start kind of reviewing it herself. But yeah, so we'll bring it up at the next meeting. Hopefully, maybe she's got a chance to meet in the meantime. If not, we still have a meeting in December as well.
I also, when receiving this, I said, so additional request for information. There's a company called World Strides. We don't know much about that. This will be a field trip, so it will be the public schools operating. So we would probably need,
Send all her questions to Ms. Comey's subcommittee.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I know.
You wanna do that?
There was just some questions, more information that we'll need. We'll probably need someone here to ask these questions to before
Yep.
we approve this. This is kind of a big deal. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, cool. What else did I have? Oh, we don't have to do it tonight, because I do have them. The MASC resolutions, the results, it was actually quite long. It went about 3 hours. And they tabled a lot of the stuff that we actually talked about, so just to give you a heads up.
So I chose the right year not to do it, huh?
Yeah, I can do a quick, pass, tabled, all that, just to get a quick feel of it, if you got to have a second, or we can just push it off.
We can push it off.
I
It's
do
already
have-
happened, and it's not going to change.
No, I
And they
know.
got tabled.
A lot, well,
Table that.
out of the 8, it was like 4 to 4, I think, tabled, and most of them were passed. All right, what else do we got? Future
Could I?
correspondence?
Yeah, it's not correspondence, more future agenda item, but
Okay.
go ahead.
No, I just want to see if I'm done in my correspondence. Anyone else have any other correspondence?
It's, I don't know where, it's correspondence / future agenda item.
Okay.
This Thursday, Commissioner Jeff Riley from DESI is visiting Woburn. I was contacted at the end of last week, and he's going to be at the Alta Vesta on Thursday morning, visiting classrooms and talking with stakeholders regarding the state of Woburn Public Schools, and probably more specifically the newly arrived students and how that experience has gone for them and what Woburn's done. I think it's been in the news quite a bit, and it's an opportunity for us to highlight what we've done well to support all of our kids. So that's Thursday. Commissioner Riley will be in Woburn.
Is that open to the public?
It's not open to the
I was going to
public,
say,
no.
we want to make sure that the
No,
statement
but I
made,
just-
because,
I just-
but he will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
No, I was just going to say that and a great deal of it is to commend the efforts of the Alta Vesta. And while we're talking about a lot of the things that are, I think, were challenges, I think a lot of it is also a celebration to what I think has been a tremendously great job.
Yeah, that's very true. We were contacted one afternoon, and then I feel like the next day we were at the Alta Vesta registering students, and Dr. Riley stepped up, and
Yes.
we've.
Yes.
And there is no relation between the principal and the commissioner, correct?
There's no relationship.
No family relation.
A lot of Rileys, a lot of Crowleys.
All right,
But they've
so
done a really, really
They've
good
done a
job.
really nice job, yes.
kind of a future agenda item, which covers it. You good?
I'm fine.
All right, Andrew, you said you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the committee's indulgence if it was possible to move our March 12th meeting a week forward to March 5th.
March?
March.
I think.
Why don't we wait till the new committee
good.
comes?
You're good with Chris?
Why?
No, I don't think that'll work for me.
Okay, I'm going to ask a few of the committee's indulgence to move that meeting.
I don't think you have enough votes.
What's the rationale?
Yeah,
Give me the
we do.
reason why.
There's four. If we all agree, we can do
It was on special request.
Oh, that's fine. Dr. Crowley.
All right, so
Jesus.
do we we'll get a
I'll
vote?
make a motion.
Okay, make a motion, to have a second,
To go to the 5th from the 12th?
whatever.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
I gotta make sure I don't
Okay,
book
I'll say
something.
aye, too.
Suppose we could ask
Yeah,
our
you got that?
schedule that works for them.
You got that?
All right, are we doing the item number 9?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so future agenda items, anything else? All right, We will be going into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union
You
personnel.
pound us when we come
Should I
back.
keep
and
going?
do it.
I make a motion for going into executive session for the reasons stated by the chair.
By the
Second.
chair and
Didn't even get
more.
out in time. Roll call.
Roll call,
I'm
please.
going to get that.
Mr.
You're never
Chisholm.
gonna get that.
Yes, I guess.
Ms. Conley, Ms. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Ms. Soren?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Kissinger?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
For a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Makes me...